Hey, how's it going? This is Chris, and today I wanted to respond to a comment that I got in a previous video around how to optimize a navigation menu for mobile. So I've got a video showing how to put together a little hamburger menu, which may or may not be useful for desktop. Definitely pretty common on mobile. So I want to, and I mentioned in that some people, myself included, might make entirely separate components, one for desktop and one for mobile, as far as their navigation. And so I'm going to do that for us today. So I'm just going to start with a brand new Gatsby project. So I'm going to do Gatsby new styled components menu. And while that's loading, I'm going to go to Gatsby styled components, just so we can see the documentation for what we need to get set up. So we're going to need to install a couple of extra dependencies here. So if you're using yarn, just do yarn add. If you're using npm, just follow these directions. So I'm going to copy all of the dependencies that I need from here. All right, now that my project is finished, I'm going to cd into styled components menu, and then I'm going to run code dot to open it up. All right, so now I've got my new project. It generated all of the basic boilerplate that I need to get started here with the Gatsby default. So I'm going to open up the terminal and I'm going to do yarn add and then paste in all of those dependencies that are required. The next thing that I'm going to need to do is in my Gatsby config, I'm going to need to add this Gatsby plugin styled components to the plugins array. So I'm going to open up Gatsby config. Here's my plugins array. And I'm just going to go underneath React Helmet. I'll add a comma. And that should be good to go. So I'm going to start off first. I'll open up the dev server with Gatsby develop. And that'll give me everything that has been generated so far. If you use a different starter, this might look a little bit different. But if you're just using, if you just do Gatsby new and then the name of your project, you should be seeing the same files that I'm seeing. So if I open up localhost 8000, here's my setup. So I'm going to go to index. I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff because we don't need any of it for now. And so cool, we've got our header and we've got, this is actually our footer, and then there's no content anywhere else. So we're focusing just on this navigation section. So the first thing that I'm going to do, take a look at our header. I'm actually going to end up kind of gutting this stuff because we're going to replace it all with our own components, and there's actually going to be two components inside of this section. We're going to have a mobile nav menu and a desktop nav menu. So for now, I can actually get rid of all this. I can get rid of this styling. And then I'm going to get rid of these header tags because we're going to actually use them in our components. And these are just fragments here. So that's going to be all that we need for now. And so that gets rid of everything at the top. All right, so let's dive in first with our desktop version. So typically you'll have some sort of logo or text or whatever. You'll have some links. Maybe you'll have a call to action button at the top. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So in my components directory, I'm going to create a new file called desktopnav.js. I'm going to import React, and then in curly brackets, I'm going to import use effect is something that we'll be using. Whoops. Use effect, use ref, and then use state, all from React. We're going to need links, so I'll import link from Gatsby. We're going to need styled components, so import styled from styled components. And then that should be good for now. So now we'll do our functional component. Desktop nav menu equals, and then we'll return a bit of JSX for now, so we'll just do an H1 that says home. And then we'll export default at the bottom, desktop nav menu. So we're not seeing anything yet because this has been exported but not imported anywhere. So in our header, I said we're going to have two components. So one of them is going to be the desktop nav menu. So I'm actually going to cut this, open up curly braces, return, and paste my fragment. And then I'm going to open up desktop nav menu and hit enter. I've got the auto import. If you don't have it, just make sure you import desktop nav menu from the same directory. And now we see home at the top. So that's a good step in the right direction. So now flipping back over to desktop nav. We're going to create our first styled component. It's going to be this container that actually wraps the whole thing. So for me, I like to do my styled component styles in the same file at the bottom. If you want to do them in separate files, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you import them into this file. So I'm going to do const. Actually, I'm going to do const styled header equals styled dot header, and then everything in here is going to be just our like standard looking CSS. So I'm going to say display flex. I'm going to give it position fixed so that it stays at the top. I'll align my items center so that they are vertically spaced evenly. I'll give it a width of the entire container, so 100% of the body. I'm going to give it a top of 0 so it stays at the top. A z index of just anything greater than 1 at this point, so that eventually this nav menu that we're going to see here is we're going to set it to scroll, and we want it to sit on top of any of the content. So if we give it a z index of anything higher than 0, it'll sit on top of the content, and you're not going to get any of the weird sort of overlay stuff. We'll give it some padding of 0 top and bottom, and then 0.5 rem left and right. We'll give it a background, just say white. And then, let's see. That should be good for now. So now let's, instead of these divs, replace it with styled header. Okay. So now let's start getting a little bit of content in here. So underneath this styled header here, what I'm going to want to do is replace this home with a link tag from Gatsby. I'm going to do 2 equals slash. And so when I click on this, it'll take me back to the home page. Next, what I want to do is create an unordered list with my list items. Each of my list items is going to be a link. So I'll say 2 equals slash about. And I'll say about. I'll copy this down and say projects, and then how about contact. So now we've got some list items here, and we'll take care of that that styling in just a little bit. And then that should be good for now. Actually, let's do one. No, that should be fine. So next thing that we want to do is style up this unordered list so that it doesn't look the way that it currently does. So let's go ahead and style that up. So in our styled header, let's do our unordered list. Actually, one thing that I forgot to do here, this link actually should also be a list item. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do a list item and then paste that in. So now we've got our all 4 of our list items, but we can position a couple things differently to make this look a little bit better. So for our header, we're going to move this display flex down into our unordered list. So now we've got it going left to right. What we'll do here is we can actually move our align items down into our unordered list. We can do width. We can do 100%. We can do justify content. Let's try space around. So now we've got them spaced. That is looking okay. We can move this padding down as well into our unordered list. Oh, we're not getting anything top and bottom, that's why. So actually, let's move that back. And let's get rid of this 0. So it's 0.5 rem top and bottom and left and right. So now we've got a little bit more space. And to see what we're working with here, let's give this a background of F7, F7, F7. Let's try something a little darker. How about, let's just do 0, 0, 0. All right, so we'll update that in a second. So one thing that we need to do here is actually align our items in the center on our header. And let's inspect this real quick. I think what is actually happening is the unordered list. So if we inspect this, and I'm just going to click on this little arrow here, you can see that our unordered list, so you can see it shows up over here, unordered list has all of this margin. So if I click on this and then go to my inspector down here, my unordered list has a margin left of 1.45 and margin bottom of 1.45. So getting rid of that is going to be good. So let's do a margin of 0. And so now we have everything centered up, which is definitely helpful. Let's style these up a little bit better. So for our LI, let's do list style of none. And then let's do actually, excuse me, let's try list style. Oh no, it's text decoration. So text decoration is the other one. We want none to get rid of the underline. Let's see, where am I missing this? Oh, that's on our, excuse me, that's not on our list items. This is on our anchor tags. So because list items have these links inside, these links are actually anchor tags. So inside of my list item, what I can do is anchor tag and then give that a text decoration of none. So now they're just purple without the underline, and let's give them a color of white. Cool, so that's starting to look a little bit better. Let's give some interactivity here. So how about inside of our anchor tag, we do :hover, and let's do color, let's do red, how about? So now when we hover over them, you're getting a little bit of interaction. Now let's make that a little bit more smooth. So in our anchor, let's go transition. Let's do color and 300 milliseconds. So now that's a little bit nicer. That's got a bit more of a smooth feel to it. Okay, so now let's this is like I said, a very basic nav bar. Let's utilize this use ref and use state stuff that we had at the top to give it a little even more interactivity. So what we'll do is we'll say const and let's do background and then set background. And we'll use the initial state of false for that. So we have our background variable and then our like adjuster. So we're setting the initial state of background to false. And then we're going to make a reference to this item so that we can make an adjustment to it when our scroll position changes. So we'll call that navRef as a reference to our navigation, and we'll call useRef on it. Then we'll set the current property of navRef. So navRef.current equals background. So it equals false currently. And then we'll use effect and we'll open up this arrow function inside. And we'll handle the scroll position. So we'll say const handle scroll equals this arrow function. And we'll say const, we can say show equals window.scroll y if it's greater than, the position is greater than, let's say 20. So we're setting this variable show equal to the scroll position y, so that's up and down. If that scroll position is greater than 20, then we're going to change this background. So if navRef.current doesn't equal this variable show, then we'll set our border, or excuse me, set our background to be this variable here that we set. Then we'll add an event listener. So we'll say document.add event listener. We're going to listen for a scroll, and then handle set it equal to, or sorry, add the second argument as this handle scroll function. And then we'll do a little cleanup. So we'll do return an arrow function where we remove the event listener with scroll and handle scroll. And then set it equal to an empty array. So now that we've got all the logic set up, here's what we can do. In our styled header, we're going to pass in this background piece of state as a variable. So let's do background, and we'll just set it equal to background. Then in our styled header, styled component down here, because we set this background prop just in the same way that you pass props to components, we now have access to this background prop in this component, and here's how we'll use it. So currently our background is hard-coded just to be black. So let's get rid of that. And then what we'll do is we'll do $, curly brace, parentheses, curly brace. So we'll destructure out our background prop from up here. We could also do props.background with just the parentheses. But instead, to keep it a little cleaner, we'll just do background, and then outside of the parentheses, but inside of the curly brace, we'll do an arrow. And if background is true, then we will set it to black. And then if not, we will set it to, let's say, that really light gray color. All right, so you see right now that the color just changed. Let's make this even more obvious. Let's do blue. All right, so you see right now that it's blue. That's because background is false. I can't scroll on here because there's not enough content. So let's just do like a little kind of hacky thing real quick. In our index page, let's make a div that says hello. And let's make this div, let's do style inline. And we'll do height. And let's say 150 VH. So this is just a hacky thing just to show you, since we don't have any actual content. So we're setting the height of this div to be basically 150% of the viewport height, so don't actually do this in real life, but it's a good way to just test to make sure you know what's happening. So you may have seen me just scroll, but if we look to desktop nav component, we have our background, which is either going to be black or blue. If the background prop is true, it's going to be black. If not, it's going to be blue. And remember, we are making a reference to this component and passing in either false or this background as show based on the scroll Y property. So if I scroll down even just a little bit, I can even just drag this and notice it switches back and forth. So that's pretty cool. Similar to what we did with the hover, where we did a little transition. What we can do is up here in our styled header, we can do transition background 300 milliseconds. And so now it's kind of a nice little smooth change. All right, so that was just the one component. But now what happens if we want to do mobile?